Rothenberg and I think we've done great things in tennis already in such a short period.
Hard courts and Sinner, they just seem to go hand in hand.
It's a 95% win rate for Sinner on the hard courts. That's more than Rafael Nadal at his peak on clay.
Aryna Sabalenka has had a really bad year, Ed. A really bad year by her standards. Do you think she could possibly defend her title?
No.
Simple as that.
They're really trying to make it into a thing, and not without some controversy or debate. A lot of the doubles players are upset that they feel like their opportunity's been taken away from them.
No. That's where I sit. We don't need this. We don't need it.
The mental health part, Maddie's right, should be a regular checkup.
Hello and welcome to this Sporting Planet, the world's view of sport this week from Singapore, the USA, Canada, and the UK. This is the show that brings together international voices who are passionate about sport and live and work in the regions where major events are taking place. We are rapidly approaching, can you believe it, the final tennis Grand Slam of the year as all attention turns to New York for the US Open. Now, after a blockbuster set of encounters between Carlos Alcaraz and Jannik Sinner in Grand Slam finals this year, could the hard courts at the Billie Jean King National Tennis Center see round 3 of what is already becoming a modern classic rivalry?
Plus, if we're talking about Sinner and Alcaraz, where does Novak Djokovic come into the conversation? Is this his last chance to win a record-breaking 25th major? And she's without a Grand Slam title since this time last year, but can Aryna Sabalenka challenge 2024 energy to defend her crown? What mental fortitude does she need to put some tough experiences of 2025 behind her? That's all on this episode of This Sporting Planet.
Edward Russell here in Singapore alongside Natalie Sawyer in London, and a little bit later on, Todd Harris in the USA, who's been catching up with tennis journalist Ben Rothenberg about what we can expect from this year's US Open and, of course, who to look out for. Now, in the men's draw, can Jannik Sinner defend his title and make it 2 slams in a row after his Wimbledon win, or will Carlos Alcaraz get his own back to make it honours even across the 4 Grand Slams this year? Meanwhile, can Aryna Sabalenka defend her crown, or could she finish Grand Slam runner-up for the 3rd time this year? It all gets underway at Flushing Meadows on Sunday, August the 24th. So eventually we will know answers to the questions that we're going to pose on this Sporting Planet today. Firstly, Natalie, we'll start with the gentlemen, shall we? Is it just a case of Sinner or Alcaraz?
I feel like it is, obviously, which in some ways is great because we love this new dynasty that's being born within tennis right now. My bias, and I'm an Alcaraz fan, absolutely love him. But I also know that hard courts and Sinner, they just seem to go hand in hand. So it's very difficult to look past the Italian who, if you look at his record this year, it's something like 62 wins to 3 losses on hard courts. It makes it very difficult for anyone who comes up against him to beat him, I think. So, yeah, I think obviously as the way that the draw will pan out, they'll probably, I assume they'll meet in the final, but I can't see anything but a Sinner win in this one, which breaks my heart to say.
Yeah, putting it into context, it's a 95% win rate for Sinner on the hard courts. That's more than Rafael Nadal at his peak on clay. So this is how dominant Sinner is. It's ridiculous, isn't it? Yeah. I mean, Alcaraz, look, he's the only player who's beaten Sinner more than once on hard court in the past 18 months. So if anyone's going to stop Sinner, it's going to be Alcaraz. He is a former champion as well. It would be nice in a way, because this rivalry is so new, to finish this Grand Slam year at 2-2, wouldn't it?
Well, I'd like that, obviously. But then it would make it a really impressive 2025 for Sinner if he was to win the US Open again. Because of that 3-month ban as well. And you can still debate whether or not he should be playing tennis currently because of everything that happened. But obviously he's allowed to play, and that's where we're at with it right now. Listen, like I said, I'd love it to be Alcaraz because I just love everything about him. But I just feel as though when it comes to the hard court, Sinner has the game for it, and he's not that long off winning Wimbledon, which is going to give him massive confidence, as well as beating his biggest rival as well in that final too, and in pretty dominant fashion, let's not forget. I just think that Sinner's got to have either an off day or even an injury, really. You go back to Wimbledon and the potential where Grigor Dimitrov looked like he was getting the better of Sinner, and then he had to pull out through injury in that match. You can argue the fortuitous nature of the fact that Sinner got through eventually into that final. But like I say, I think the only way that Sinner can't win it is if it's injury or just a really, really off day. And I just don't think he's capable of that, really.
Yeah, real shame that Grigor Dimitrov has had to pull out of the US Open as well because of that injury, because he looked so good, didn't he, at Wimbledon? As we've started mentioning other names, I guess we should probably, say that on the off chance that neither Sinner or Alcaraz are going to win this one, who else comes into contention? I know you had a thought that Jack Draper would go deep in Wimbledon. Of course, he got knocked out in the second round, but I think this could be the tournament where he surprises everyone. Well, not surprises you because, you expected big things from him. But he's got the weapons, doesn't he, on the hard court? He's got that big serve.
Yeah.
I guess the question is just whether or not he's fit enough to go deep at the US Open because of that arm injury, which he picked up at Wimbledon, and that's forced him to withdraw from Cincinnati and Toronto. So I guess we have to see what shape he's in. But could he be a dark horse, do you think?
You're right to mention the injury. That's a big issue. And that's the what-if situation when it comes to Jack Draper coming into this US Open. The US Open he reached the semi-finals, last year? That's his best Grand Slam record to date. So he knows how to go deep at Flushing Meadows. He doesn't know how to go deep at Wimbledon. And that's something he has been scratching his head over. He said it, that he just doesn't get why he can't go further than the second round at Wimbledon. From a British perspective, I'd love to see Jack Draper go as far as he possibly can in this tournament. Getting to the semi-finals would be brilliant. Getting to the final would be exceptional. Again, it all depends on the draw and how it all pans out. But, if he's got to get to the final, it means he's probably going to have to beat a Sinner or he's going to have to beat an Alcaraz. And I can't see that happening anytime soon.
We did a Premier League contenders episode last time out, and we got through, I think, half an hour without mentioning Man United. So far, we've done a US Open preview, and we haven't mentioned Novak Djokovic. What does that say?
Yeah, I was wondering when that was going to get brought up. You're right. Although, weirdly, the Man United one felt more natural to not mention them in the top four conversation. Whereas with Novak Djokovic, you feel like it was only a matter of time that we had to talk about him. That carrot of the 25th major, it's there, isn't it? That's why he's still playing as much as anything. And we know how well he does at the US Open as well. So I think he is certainly a name to look out for. But again, I just can't see anything. It's really hard to discuss other players when you're thinking it's just going to be between Sinner and Alcaraz. Yeah. And like I say, if Djokovic is going to get to that final, it means he's not one of them out. And then if he's not one of them out, he's probably done it in 4, maybe 5 sets. And that's the exertion that comes into play with this one as well. So yeah, as much as I think it'd be lovely to see him finally winning that 25th major, I'm not sure this year is the year for him.
Yeah, I mean, there are so many names, I guess, that normally you would have in contention, the likes of Zverev, perhaps, former finalist Daniil Medvedev, a former champion as well, but it's just so hard to look past Sinner and Alcaraz, isn't it? Whereas on the women's side of things, at least, it seems a lot more open.
Completely. It's baffling, isn't it? It's wonderful in a way, but completely baffling at the same time because the strength of the women's game is so brilliant. And that's not to diminish the men's game because obviously there are incredible men tennis players, but it's just so much wider and open when it comes to the women's side of things. Obviously, you've got Iga Swiatek coming in fresh after winning Wimbledon in emphatic double bagel circumstances. So you sort of feel like, well, she got to that final and won that final with such ease. She's not going to be knackered. She'll be fine for US Open. And there are the home favourites that I think are really important to look out for. Coco Gauff, who has obviously won at Flushing Meadows before. She had a really disappointing Wimbledon, I think, going out in the first round. But she is loved, and she is loved by the US, the fans. And she's going to get that love by the home crowd. I think that's only going to be an inspiration for her. And like I say, she's done it before. So she knows how to get the job done at Flushing Meadows with the pressure of being a home player as well. So Coco Gauff is certainly one I'd also consider as a contender for this one. But I mean, Aryna Sabalenka has had a really bad year, Ed, a really bad year by her standards. Do you think she could possibly defend her title?
No.
Simple as that.
I don't think so. I mean, she's really shown some vulnerability this year, which we haven't seen from her so consistently in previous seasons. I think you're very right to mention the crowd when it comes to Coco, because we always say this, don't we? Home support, it's very important. But Arthur Ashe is the biggest arena in tennis. I've been there. It's massive. And the US fans are so one-sided. that they will boo for the opponents of US players. I was there when Madison Keys won, up against Sloane Stephens. I mean, the atmosphere there with an All-American final is absolutely crazy. They will be going hard for Coco, just like they will be in the men's side for the likes of Ben Shelton and Taylor Fritz as well, who I think could be dark horses because of the US support. And I think if Sabalenka comes up against Coco at some point earlier on, paired with the fact that she lost to Coco recently in that final, but with the crowd will be 100% on Coco's side and very vocally against Sabalenka, I think that will break her.
Yeah. And you mentioned Madison Keys. You know, she's in the Australian Open champion, winning earlier this year as she beat Aryna Sabalenka in that final. Again, that's the hard courts of Australia. It's the hard courts of America and New York. Once you know you can get something like a major done on a surface that you clearly quite like, I think that kind of helps. That gives you a bit of a confidence boost, I imagine, coming into New York as she will be. So I think Madison Keys, I did tip her for Wimbledon as a dark horse. That was another failure because she went out in the third round. But I'm again blaming that on the surface rather than anything else and thinking that maybe the hard courts is the one for Madison Keys.
Well, in a moment, we'll head to America to hear from journalist Ben Rothenberg, who's been chatting to our very own Todd Harris about who to watch out for at the tournament. But first, Carlos Alcaraz and Jannik Sinner will be two names in the mix on the men's side, and they've been speaking about their growing rivalry in the sport.
Yeah, Jannik and I think we've done great things in tennis already in such a short period. Yeah, a lot of people. I just let the people talk about our rivalry or the things that we have done, for the history books, in tennis. I'm not thinking about the history we're making in tennis. I think we have such a long career ahead, just to see how far we can go, and if we already made or not history in tennis, it's just for the people to discuss about it.
Yeah, it was a moment what I never felt before, because only me and my team, we know exactly what we went through. It was the week before Wimbledon was maybe one of the best practice weeks I've had, and before the tournament I said, guys, I'm ready to play, and we didn't exactly know how I would react after Paris. Had a very early outcome in Halle, which in other ways was fine. And then we, match after match, I felt ready, and then better and better. Got lucky with Grigor. But this for me, like, I tried to use it as a sign. You never know what's happening, and that's how it is in tennis. That that you have to understand why and how some things happens, and then I really raised my level. I played one of the best tennis I could play, and yeah, it was a very, very emotional day for me.
Fascinating to see if those two will contend yet another Grand Slam final in 2025. Now, someone who might be hoping they do is US journalist, author, and podcast host Ben Rothenberg. He's one of the most well-known people on the tennis circuit and recently wrote a biography about Naomi Osaka. As ever, you can hear Ben's full chat with Todd Harris on our This Sporting Planet YouTube channel, but here's part of it now, with Ben sharing his thoughts about what to expect from the US Open.
Jannik Sinner and Carlos Alcaraz have already played out two incredible finals and Grand Slams this year. Do you think we'll see another one in New York City?
I think it's very likely. I think that the way those two guys have separated themselves from the field is pretty clear, and the level they achieve and that they show off in their finals against each other, I think really shows just how distant they've gotten from the pack. I mean, especially in Paris at the French Open, the level those two played was just so far beyond what anyone else in men's tennis right now seems even close to being capable of right now. Really, the closest threat to that duopoly probably is Novak Djokovic, and he's 38 years old and probably doesn't have the same capability of getting onto that level for a full best of 5 match the way it would take to knock off one of those guys en route to the final. And so they seem like the guys, and obviously things can happen, and Alcaraz especially has been more up and down a lot of times in his early round matches, but I think that Sinner should be pretty much a lock if healthy to get back to another US Open final, and Alcaraz a clear favorite on his bottom half of the draw as well to meet him there. And it'd be pretty cool to get a third straight meeting, a pretty cool continuity for that rivalry if they can really, without a doubt, even further consolidate in their spot at the top of the game.
From that, we move to the women's side, and it's incredibly open, maybe more so than we've seen in a long time. You look at some of the names that have done well this year in Grand Slams. So as we turn the page now and start getting ready for the U.S. Open, who do you like on the women's side?
I think since Serena Williams went on leave for pregnancy and maternity leave, I think the women's game has stayed pretty wide open, and a lot of times at the majors, and a lot of different things have shaken out at different majors. We've had 3 different champions at the majors so far this year. Number 1, Aryna Sabalenka, pretty clear number 1 in the rankings, but hasn't won a major yet this year. She's defending champion in New York and probably would be a slight favorite at this point to defend that title, but a lot of people much closer on her heels than you would see on the women's side. So Coco Gauff probably gets mentioned quickly. She's number 2, and she has been behind Sabalenka and beating her twice in major finals in Paris this year, and then also in U.S. Open in 2023. And then Iga Swiatek, who played a really, really impressive Wimbledon. What everyone thought was her weakest surface on grass. She was pretty ruthless getting through that tournament, dropping only 1 set and dropping 0 games in the final against Amanda Anisimova, which I think really honestly was more about Swiatek just being unbeatable and unplayable rather than Anisimova being abysmal. I mean, Anisimova wasn't at her best for sure, but I mean, Swiatek was just good, and once she gets rolling, really can close out tournaments with that kind of scoreline quite a few times in her career. So she's a scary one if she gets a head of steam behind her. She's won this tournament U.S. Open once before in 2022. The fast hard court's not her most natural surface, but I think she'll be in good confidence right now and feeling good about her game and feeling good physically and everything like that. So she's certainly on the list. And then there's a couple Americans I'd probably throw in there too on the short list. Madison Keys, who won the Australian Open this year. Somewhat unexpected, but long awaited, and I think everyone thinks deserved kind of lifetime achievement award for her after a really long, strong career to break through to win one of these tournaments, and did it in really emphatic fashion, beating Swiatek in the semifinals and then Sabalenka in the final. Top 2 players in the game at that point, so that was a very good win for her. And then Jessie Pegula probably to make a 5th candidate. She was the finalist last year, beat Swiatek last year en route to the final, played Sabalenka reasonably tough in a straight set loss in that final, and she's also someone in there as well.
We're chatting with author and journalist Ben Rothenberg here on This Sporting Planet. All right, so there's a new mixed doubles tournament starting this year. Can you just explain to us what fans can expect in this?
Yeah, so the U.S. Open and the U.S. Tennis Association really completely revamped and pretty much reinvented the mixed doubles format, which often had been an afterthought held in the second week of the Grand Slam events, and almost always featuring just doubles specialists who are an increasingly separate population of players who just play the doubles events and are often not the ones people who are any kind of level of tennis fans have watched on TV or have seen ever playing singles matches. It's been kind of a separate group. And this time, to breathe new life into this mixed doubles format, and also should say there's just been a lot of energy around mixed format sports in across sports, period. If you look at the Olympics, all sorts of different sports and disciplines are inventing new mixed formats out of nothing. You have the swimming mixed relays and track mixed relays now, and I think even sports like archery or whatever are inventing ways for men and women to compete side by side. They just think it's a cool modern thing to do, and tennis has had this in its quiver for a long time. They've had mixed doubles. I mean, since the early Victorian garden party days of tennis, mixed doubles was invented and was there, and with men and women being together and both being socially and athletically accepted in the sport has been something that's a hallmark of tennis for a long time. That women's tennis didn't really have to catch up to the men or invent something to replicate what the men had. They've always been there in tennis, and so that's a cool asset of tennis. And I think it probably had been really underutilized by the Grand Slams just because they weren't getting a lot of eyeballs at all in their mixed event. So the U.S. Open decided to make a big change, which is basing entry for the mixed doubles competition on only singles rankings instead of on doubles rankings. So basically locking out a lot of the top doubles specialists who normally populate that entire event, and putting a lot of the single stars in there, and also giving other incentives and encouragement for them to play. And so you're going to see a lot of big names, all names we pretty much mentioned here already, who are going to be in this mixed doubles event. Players like Jannik Sinner, Carlos Alcaraz, Novak Djokovic, all entered this event as well, and a lot of the top women as well. are in there now. There's still some shuffling around the entry list. We don't know quite who's going to be the final teams, but it does seem like it's going to be a pretty cool event to see these players teaming up and competing in a new format and a lot of the familiar names. And US Open's being very clear, this is going to be their official mixed doubles title for the year. It's going to be a real Grand Slam event and should have the clout that has. There's also way more prize money. It's also part of the reason I'm sure that a lot of these players are showing up for this event is that they've really, quadrupled, quintupled at least the prize money on offer, which had been pretty meager for mixed doubles in the past because it was really an afterthought event. But they're really trying to make it into a thing, and not without some controversy or debate. A lot of the doubles players are upset that they feel like their opportunity has been taken away from them, but I think there's no denying that it's going to be a much more successful business product, a lot more people watching, a lot more people remembering who's going to win this event. And it'll be cool because at least they just put out a provisional list recently, and the defending champion team is an Italian pair of doubles specialists, Sara Errani and Andrea Vavasori. They are they did get given a spot in the draw. So we'll get to see sort of at least one, torchbearer for the sort of traditional double specialist types going up against these singles talents who may have better shots and better athleticism and bigger power, but don't have the sort of doubles acumen and tactical experience that this double specialist team will have. So that'll be cool as well to see how they fare. And yeah, I think it's going to bring a lot of excitement to the event. It's being put on really early before the main draw starts. It's on the Tuesday and Wednesday before the week before the US Open main draw starts. So pretty well out in advance, but it's going to be an interesting sort of curtain raiser type event for this event for the first time.
Yeah, really fascinating stuff. Just a reminder, you can listen to the full chat between Todd and Ben on the This Sporting Planet YouTube channel. So Ben explained there this new mixed doubles tournament that's taking place at the US Open, and it's seeing the likes of Carlos Alcaraz pairing up with Emma Raducanu, Jannik Sinner partnering up with Emma Navarro. It's interesting, to put it mildly. Natalie, where do you sit?
No. That's where I sit. Okay. We don't need this. We don't need it. Oh, I'm dead against this because I just feel as though it's so disrespectful to players that are expert doubles players who can't now get into this tournament.
Yeah.
To me, it's all about, obviously, they're thinking about profit over maybe substance with this one as well, in the sense of that it's being staged, obviously, before the main US Open begins. And so they want to get more footfall into Flushing Meadows, and therefore they're going to make a bit more money out of it for all of these different reasons. I just feel as though you're devaluing the doubles players, the specialist players who can't get into a tournament that they would love to be a part of. And I just think that's a real shame at the end of the day. And it's, again, another sort of revolution of sport that, has anybody asked for this? I don't think they have. So why are we doing it?
No, I agree. And I think not only are you disrespecting the mixed doubles players, but you are taking away a very valuable lifeline for them as well. Mm-hmm. You're not giving the opportunity for them to make money. And for many, that's the only cash cow that they have, and we know how expensive tennis can be to stay on the circuit. It feels like an exhibition event, doesn't it? And let's remember, you still earn a Grand Slam trophy at the end of it.
Absolutely. And that's what's mind-boggling as well. You're actually winning a major, and that's going to go, and that's going to die with you, if you win it. And yet it doesn't feel like it's a proper tournament because you haven't gone through the normal procedures. And I'm glad to see that the Australian Open, obviously, which will be the next slam to come in 2026, they've already said they're not looking to make any changes, which I think is right. I don't know why we need to do these things. We have plenty of exhibition sort of tournaments that take place around the world. And as much as it's lovely to see, Jannik Sinner playing mixed doubles, as is, and obviously there's the talk of Aryna Sabalenka and Carlos Alcaraz a couple, and everyone's going to be looking on and all of this sort of stuff. All of these little stories are great, and they're great people to be involved in the tournament. I just think, let them concentrate on what they want to concentrate, i.e. the singles, for example. And I don't know, I'm just not in favour of it. And that's mainly because I'm of a certain age that just likes to keep things traditional and, as you say, allow the right people to qualify for these tournaments to make sure that their careers are still funded for as long as they can be.
Yeah, I mean, you've got Sara Errani and Andrea Vavasori, the defending champions, who initially weren't allowed to defend their title. They then put up a pretty angry Instagram post, and suddenly they've been handed a wild card to play in this tournament. Again, it kind of shows that there wasn't a whole lot of thinking by the USTA going into this, and it's kind of a little bit reactive now.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And at the very sort of forefront of anything when you bring in a new competition, I'd have thought the defending champions should be a given that they're allowed to defend their title. So that was poor planning on the US Open's part. I think, ultimately, as much as, mixed doubles is only ever played really at majors. So I know that we're only talking about 4 tournaments a year, really, in the main. But I think still at the end of the day, when you're inviting a Jannik Sinner to play, who primarily is going to want to concentrate on his singles, likewise a Carlos Alcaraz and Jack Draper and everyone else, what does that say to all the doubles players? That's really their gig. Doubles is what they do week in, week out. And yes, as I say, mixed doubles is slightly different. But no wonder there are certain players that are saying, well, maybe you just look at us as inferior to all of these other players because you don't want us involved. You're having to bring in the star names, and yet they in their own right should be the stars because they're the ones that are the specialists when it comes to doubles.
Yeah, you're taking away money from those who need it and giving it to those who don't need it because, they are the best singles players in the world. You raise a good point, actually, in terms of how much are these players going to exert themselves, because it is before the tournament itself. You don't want to jeopardize your singles run by picking up an injury in the mixed doubles. You look at Andy Murray's final appearance at Wimbledon, where Emma Raducanu pulled out of partnering with him because she didn't want to get injured and affect her singles run. So what kind of quality are we going to see in this tournament as well?
Yeah, and which then leads us all to think it's more of an exhibition than anything else. And it's just a bit of a gimmick because it's all about US Open making sure they can get a bit more money out of, maybe it's a separate deal with the broadcasters, I don't know. And also maybe it's also encouraging more people to come to Flushing Meadows to watch. Look, it's only staged over a couple of days, so it's not a massive exertion. And I know they slightly tinkered with the sort of format of it as well. But like you say, at the end of the day, Jannik Sinner, Carlos Alcaraz, Jack Draper, they just want to get out there and play their singles matches and see if they can actually win this title. So, I just feel sorry for those doubles players that have missed out. They've probably been regulars in New York and aren't going to be there this time around.
Yeah, I guess when it comes to, as you said, the likes of Alcaraz and Sinner just wanting to get this done with and move on, the good news for them, because they've rejigged the format, is you can win 32 games. That's all you have to win, and you can win the major title. So it could be over in a flash anyway.
Why don't we get involved, Edward? We could be major champions. It'd be fabulous. Why don't they should just invite, randoms. That'd be fun.
I don't think we would get the wild card based on our singles rankings, Natalie.
No, that is very true. Yeah. It's a small error, but anyway, we could always try and, encourage the US Open people to rethink it for next year anyway. Let's continue our US Open preview now and hear from a very special guest who not only reached the quarterfinals of the US Open, but has now turned her attention in retirement to helping others reach similar heights. Patricia Hy also represented Canada at the 1996 Olympics and is now a mental performance coach. Jack Winstanley's been catching up with her.
There's been a lot of conversation this year, particularly in tennis, around mental health. And I want to take you back to January and a brilliant post-victory press conference from Madison Keys, where a reporter said to her, how have you come to win your first major at the Australian Open? And she said, just a lot of therapy. And a lot of people found that really refreshing. What did you think when you heard those comments from Madison Keys?
Well, she's absolutely right, because forget the tennis part. Every single day, right? We have problems. We have issues. We're humans. When you are breathing, there are going to be issues once you walk out the door. So you have to deal with that, and you put in a successful athlete. Everybody is demanding of your time. Sponsors are demanding for your performance. You have to win for this and that. So you go, and you don't have time for yourself. You're always on the go. You're racing, not just physically, but mentally as well. There are meetings to go to, there are trainings to go to, and you're constantly on the go. It's not healthy, it's harmful. So you have to find a way to let that go in order for you to be able to perform. And you have to be able to speak to somebody about it. A lot of times, actually, in a roundabout way, a lot of the athletes I work with, we talk a lot, not just the mental performance part, but outside things, they all come back to rejecting themselves. Now, when the conversation gets too deep, I would encourage them to see, a sports psychologist or somebody a professional, in that field, because that was beyond what I want to do. I'm strictly wanting to focus, how do I get you ready for your matches and so forth, right? So, but then the mental health part, you know, and Madison is right, Maddie is right, you know, should be a regular checkup. It's okay. You know, like going to see a doctor, right? Nobody goes see a doctor when they're healthy, but then that's when you get older, you get these notification or letter, you know, for your regular checkup to catch it before you get ill. You know, the mental health is the same thing. There's so, especially these days with the social media, it is cruel. It is some of these things that, you know, are comments. And I know a lot of athletes I work with as well, they read them. And I'm like, why? Why would you give that energy to these inconsiderate people writing all sorts of rubbish?
Yeah.
And they laugh it off. But, you know, it's they may laugh it off, but some can't laugh it off, and it affects them.
And how receptive would you say tennis as a sport is to helping people if they are having mental health struggles in the game? Because, for instance, for a bit of context, recently on this Sporting Planet we spoke to an English golfer called Chris Wood, who says that the DP World Tour that he plays on, they've got these special facilities on tour now that can be used for relaxation, and they're the ones that, you know, speaking about their doctors are the ones that helped him through his kind of darkest moments in the last couple of years. Would you say tennis as a kind of holistic sport is able to help athletes who might go, do you know what, I'm struggling at the moment?
Oh, we do. I know on the WTA tour, they do provide the healthcare services on site, and that's magnificent. They've gone to a lot of length to make that happen. Now, whether the players are taking advantage of that, I don't know, but they should, because it is absolutely there. And when you're not at the tournament, the service is still available. All you have to do is pick up the phone and speak to somebody, or you go on Zoom, whichever. On the men's tour, I am not so sure yet, but even on the men's tour, they should provide that, you know, because this is sacred. This is confidential. You don't, you know, it's the physical injuries, you can see it. Mental health issues, you can't detect it. You got, you know, it's not like somebody's limping. You're like, oh yeah, there's that leg problem, knee problem, ankle problem. Somebody's suffering from mental health. It's up to the individual to go seek help, and I'm for it 100%.
Yeah, absolutely. Another one we saw was obviously Ons Jabeur announced in mid-July, didn't she, that she was taking a break from the sport to focus on her own mental well-being. And do you think that could potentially become more common and, you know, less stigmatized almost? Because I guess if you look back 10 years ago, 20 years ago, we've come so far forward, haven't we? Even if there is still more to do.
Oh, absolutely. You know, it's well, we on tour we have trainers, right? You got a physical ailment, you go see the trainer. You know, you're right. I mean, throughout the years, I know like Naomi Osaka, you know, took some time off, and Bianca Andreescu the same thing. You know, they came out and just say, hey, I need to take a break. You know, and tennis is very long, and I know on the tour they're trying to accommodate more rest for the players, but the demands is incredible. I mean, I don't know any other sport that is like 11 months long.
Yeah.
You know, if you look at the average, I see players playing between, you know, 25. Okay, they're the exception of the Sinners because he wins everything when he steps on the court. So he goes and plays, you know, 12, 13 tournaments, whichever, right? But you know, it's normal for a tennis player to play 25 tournaments, and the highest is 35. There are only so many weeks in a year, but then because they're trying to make, you know, and the reason these players are playing so many tournaments, they're trying to get the points that is enough to get them into the tour. The biggest thing is getting into the Grand Slams so that they can earn enough money to support themselves, because it's expensive to travel. You know, if you overdo it, 25, 35 tournaments, that is exhausting, because you know you don't have a lot of time to rest, physically or mentally.
Thank you so much to Patricia Hy for joining us on This Sporting Planet. And as always, you can catch the full chat over on our YouTube channel. That is it for this episode. Make sure to subscribe to the show via your favorite podcast provider so you never miss an episode. And make sure to leave us a review as well. And remember, on Spotify, you can now watch our episodes as well as listen to them. So let us know what you think. Plus, if you're watching this on YouTube, get involved in the discussion in the comments. We would love to hear what you thought of everything we discussed in this episode.
And we've got something really exciting coming up for you in the next couple of episodes. That's because we'll be releasing 2 episodes with all of our best bits from the last 7 months, with our favourite interviews and the most entertaining bickering between myself, Edward, Todd, Kate, Sahel, Colette, and the rest of the gang as well. Our regular episodes will be back in September. So enjoy those episodes. And for now, from myself, Edward, Todd, and the whole This Sporting Planet team, thanks for listening.